Good evening, everyone. It is January 30th. This is the symposium with Diane Sayre, independent presidential candidate. Tonight, I'm going to be joined by two congressional candidates, and this is the first of what will probably become a series of roundtable discussions with candidates running particularly for federal office. I know this may come as a shock to many of you watching, but it is my belief that we are not suffering from having too much qualified leadership. It's not like the military. Well, they're probably unqualified too, where you have all these 4 and 5 stars, as Colonel McGregor talks about, way more than we had during World War II. And the military is doing worse. This is not that situation. There are very, very few people in positions of power who are actually qualified to be there. And we have a series of cascading crises, and people are not putting the solutions on the table. And I will say, as Lyndon LaRouche warned and said emphatically and famously in his July 25th, 2007 webcast, there is no possibility of a non-collapse of the transatlantic financial and economic system. It's really done. Now, what form that takes, that is hard to predict. There's been new rounds of quantitative easing. The US pumped $75 billion or so into the financial markets in the last few weeks of 2025. We have some problems now with the situation with the Japan, the yen, the interest rates that are being paid on government bonds, which suddenly doubled from 1-point-something% to 2-point-something%, which wipes out the profits for people who are betting on the margins, as they say. That's causing some turbulence. What will be the straw that breaks the camel's back? I don't know. But you have people with the military industrial complex agencies, or the people with complexes who believe that they can save this system by entering a new arms race. And just before I bring my guests in, I would like to say that on Thursday of next week, February 5th, is the end of the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, the New START, which was signed by Barack Obama and Dmitry Medvedev, I believe, in 2010. That comes to an end on February 5th, and Colonel Doug McGregor has warned about a nuclear gain of function. So not only are we on the brink of a war with Iran, which could be catastrophic, not only do we have masked bandits wearing ice on their shirts, running around, harassing people of color in this country, including emphatically U.S. citizens, violating the Constitution, shooting people exercising their First Amendment rights in this country. But we could be off to the races in terms of the development of unbelievably lethal and deadly weapons with no treaty agreements, no end in sight. So in that context, I'm going to bring in my guests. First I'll bring in Jose Vega, who's running for Congress in the Bronx. He was with me, was it just last week, Jose?
Yeah, sure. Oh yeah, it was last Friday, yeah.
Yeah, and then also Anthony Aguilar, a friend of ours are you still in Minnesota, Tony, or where are you?
I'm in DC. I was in Minnesota earlier in the week, and then I transitioned to DC, and I joined the Abolish ICE and General Strike today in DC.
Great.
Nice.
Okay, so I know for you, Tony, you're nowhere near becoming a perennial candidate, as Lyndon LaRouche was known as a perennial presidential candidate. I did finally have one person call me a perennial candidate last year. Jose's working on it. He's just running now for the second time. You are new to this, and I actually wanted to ask you if your experience with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation had anything to do with your decision to run for Congress.
I would say not not directly, but the buildup of multiple layers of awareness from the experience that I had with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation in learning unequivocally that the United States government as a known entity and agency in the plan to forcefully displace, starve, and further kill Palestinians, really opened my eyes to a truth of our government that I was always speculative of, but had never really had, I guess, the concrete proof before my eyes that showed me that was the case, the smoking gun, if you will. And when I first returned from Gaza and I started to speak with members of Congress about my experience and how the United States should not be participating and should not be complicit in the execution of a genocide, the majority of representatives in our Congress, their responses to me were everything from "we don't care" to, not really a priority for me, or "oh, we're aware of it and we're 100% behind it." And the totality of that really started to bother me. It bothered me to the point to where, as a 25-year service member who has seen the world and has seen war around the world, to see the potentiality of where that can lead us as a nation, it scares me. And I had a choice to either live in fear and just detach and do nothing, and just become a ostrich with my head in the sand and just worry about myself, or step up and try to do something to change it. So I decided that I would step up and try to do something to change it.
Well, I'm really glad that you did. I mean, I think that really is the reason to run for office. And I wish that more people had that intent. I perhaps am naive, but I think a significant number of people who run for office have that idea, but they get lost along the way. For example, one of the things, and Jose, you may have run into this as well. Well, don't tell everybody that you're going to do X, just pretend you're doing Y. And then when you get into office, you can actually do X. People have all these compromise strategies, but if you begin to go down that path, you will discover, I think, that it's like the invasion of the body snatchers. You lose your soul if you don't tell the truth and stand by it, despite the difficulty. And this is such an incredibly charged situation. I mean, I had the advantage of having gone through this as a LaRouche organizer when they were putting him in prison and calling him all the names. And literally, you would, you would set up a hotel room for a conference or something, and you think it was ready to go, and then we're sorry, we realize there's a conflict, you can't have the meeting here, or and it would be like pulling teeth to get people to tell you what happened. Or you just say LaRouche, or people would get very enthusiastic, they'd run off and try and organize their friends, and then you could never get them on the phone again.
Well, let me tell you this, Diane. I actually just had a discussion with somebody about exactly this issue. Jose, you need to, anytime you make a video, talk about the kitchen table issues. What's people's rents like? What's people's groceries like? Not to say that those things aren't important, but if that's coupled with, you need to stop talking about Gaza. You need to stop talking about Ukraine. I actually had a very prominent politician tell me, whom you and I both know, and I won't say any more as to who this was, say to me, Jose, stop talking about Ukraine, a START treaty. You can get your congressman just by tying a noose around his neck and tying him to genocide. Why do you need to confuse the hell out of your constituents by talking about something they can't understand, which is the new START treaty, which you've been talking about. You spoke about it this morning on the IPC. And I had a discussion with somebody just now telling me, look, man, I hate to say it, but people don't care about Gaza and genocide. If that's true, that people don't care in the Bronx about Gaza and genocide, then the people can't be saved. But the truth is they do care about genocide. They do care about Gaza. That's why I'm running for Congress, to give people a voice and an avenue to express that frustration of the images they see coming out of Palestine and Gaza every single day. I don't want to hear that people want to be treated like animals, okay? You don't talk about human beings the way you talk about pets, okay? What's the rent? You have a dog, right? I'm sure you care about the cost of, how much the food is, their vet bills, right? And, where you're going to take care of them. People are not dogs. They're not cats, although they would be better if they were cats. But that's just my personal bias towards cats coming out. But no, people are human beings. They don't just need to be clothed and fed and that's it. That's not true. We have a mind. We have reason. And people have been conditioned for over 50 years in this district and in the country as a whole to only care about themselves. But there's something in the back of their heads, which is their soul, that cries out and says, no, I'm destined for something greater than this. I'm not just supposed to eat, sleep, and crap and do this every day. There is something more I'm supposed to do. And you're supposed to, the people who have decided to dedicate our lives to a greater cause, are supposed to be that bridge to say, yes, there is more. You can unlock the potentials of your reason and of your creative mind if you help us stand up for what's right. And I really believe in the saying that freedom is the ability to make other people free. And that's why I think both Tony and I are actually doing what we're doing and running for Congress, and you running for president. So, yeah. Sorry to get on my soapbox there.
I think, though, we have an obligation, and Tony may want to speak to this, because while people may not see it, it is, the expression, first they came for the Unionists and I said nothing, and then they came for and then they came for the Jews and I said nothing, and then they came for me and there was no one there. You cannot, and I've been saying this for many years, you should not expect that we can tolerate genocide and fund it and support it and then not experience the same policy at home. And Americans may not wish to face that. So we have an obligation, I believe, to do the hard job of telling people something they don't want to hear, but they need to hear for their own survival.
That's right. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree with Diane's sentiment in the why. For me, in the District 13 of North Carolina, the majority of constituents and voters, to be honest with myself, probably do not care about Gaza or Palestinians as an issue. It's not a kitchen table issue for them, nor is it probably an issue that they pay attention to at all, really, other than what they may see in a headline here or there. And there may be some that have interest in it, but as a majority of an issue, no. But I have a responsibility, I have a duty from what I have seen to tell the American people and to warn the American people that you may not care about it, but you're going to when it does become a kitchen table topic, and then it's too late. For example, the biometrics that we're using in Gaza to biometrically enroll and control people through Palantir and military industrial grade biometrics that are now being outfitted to ICE. You're going to care when that starts to get used on you. The weapons that we're developing for riot control, sonic weapons, military grade weapons that will soon be in the hands of ICE agents and federal agents in the United States. You're going to care when it's used against you. The amount of tax dollars that we spend to give Israel billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of bombs and our money. And when we spend everything in our country and have nothing left for Social Security or healthcare or our way of life here in the United States, then you're going to care. And that is coming. I feel like the view that I have of this is that I'm standing on a hill and I have an overview of the countryside, and I see a train, and miles away that the bridge is out and that train is going off of that track, everybody on the train thinks that it's a great ride, and that any rumor of the bridge ahead being out is just that's a problem we'll deal with another day. But it's coming, and it's coming quicker than the majority of us want to believe. And all of the indicators of that bridge being out are everything that we're seeing in places like Gaza, in places like Minneapolis, in places like the Congo, where the United States and others are complicit. To think that that tyranny that we export won't come back to our streets, both in theory through the tyrannical leaders that impose it, but also in practice through the tactics and techniques and the equipment that we use there as a testing ground to then use here. There are members of ICE that were hired prior to them working for ICE, that were working for the UG Solutions with me in Gaza, that are part of the Infidels Motorcycle Club, that are now being recruited and hired into ICE. If there's not more of a clear connect between the laboratory of inhumanity between Gaza and here in the United States, I don't know how else clearly to show that to the American people. And
also, I want to add that ICE does have a big headquarters in Tel Aviv.
So ICE does have a headquarters in Tel Aviv, but to be fair, ICE has headquarters offices in other nations throughout the Middle East. However, the office that they have in Tel Aviv is the most robust, and they also have, it's not just a matter of having an office in Tel Aviv, they have a field training detachment in Tel Aviv. So under the Department of Homeland Security and ICE, there are agencies that have offices in other countries as part of their enforcement responsibility as a counterterrorism like entity created by the Patriot Act in 2003. What makes Tel Aviv more unique is that they have a field training office in Tel Aviv where ICE agents that go through the basic training for entry as an agent go through that training. That's what's unique, and that's what's dangerous. And that is what the United States is funding. The Binational Industrial Research and Development Program under the Department of Homeland Security is funded by the U.S. tax dollar. And that training program is between Israel and the United States, where field agents not only train in Israel, but IDF also train here in Georgia. It's a subject matter exchange training program. So the techniques cross-pollinated, but also the culture cross-pollinated. That culture of not allowing medical treatment, denying the incident, not investigating, calling the victim a terrorist. That's the exact same TTP we see the IDF use in the West Bank and in Gaza. That's not a coincidence. That is trained.
Because you're coming from Minnesota, and I want you to tell everyone who doesn't know why you're saying that. Why are you saying that that's going on in the United States?
Because we have all seen it with my own eyes, and from my eyes, and looking at from a tactical perspective of how these ICE agents that are fielded, they are. We already know that the training program that they go through has been greatly reduced in time, because the objective of the Department of Homeland Security fiscal year strategy for 23 to 27, and mind you, we're already in fiscal year 26 right now, a good chunk of the way through it, on the way to FY 27. And when we get there, the intent is to have 10,000 fielded ICE agents on the streets of America. And they're getting rushed through the training. They're not getting training on ethics, de-escalation, how to de-escalate a situation on the street. They're not given any of that training. They're trained on how to serve a warrant in a violent manner, and that anything is a threat. That's military training. That's militarized training in a combat zone. And we're seeing that training. We're seeing that they do not cooperate and work effectively as a team. In that situation where 6 agents were pummeling Alex, you had one guy taking a gun, one guy beating him in the head, one guy pulling out a gun ready to shoot him, and 2 guys standing there not really sure what was going on, because when the shots went off, it shocked them just as much as it did everybody else around them. They are not trained well. They are not trained to deal with the situations that they are in. And that's the most scary, is because we give them guns and we don't give them training, and we tell them to go into the streets and follow their instincts, and their instincts are what we see. They are prone to violence. They're recruited. The people they recruit that predisposition. So I saw it in the streets of Minneapolis. When I was in Minneapolis, the protest organization or the group of protesters held a demonstration at the hotel that the ICE agents are staying at in Maplewood at the Homewood Suites. And at that hotel, where you had American citizens outside demonstrating, ICE agents inside of that hotel were flicking them the middle finger, pulling down their pants and mooning them, drinking and holding up their beers and celebrating. These are federal agents paid by our tax dollars who are on duty,
That
drinking.
sounds so much like the Israeli soldiers, doesn't it? Going and having parties behind the, at the gate that they're blocking to prevent Palestinian children from eating. I mean, a really sick mentality. I appreciate it's really important because you have a lot of people trying to defend the murder of Alex Preddy and Renee Good. And what they say is, well, if you disobey orders, or these are law enforcement. And I mean, it's really, it's a very sick view to say that. Even, I mean, okay, so Renee Good did not get out of her car when the guy started pulling on the handle. That is not punishable by death. You don't get to shoot people because they don't open their car door when you tell them to do so. I don't know where people think they are, to tell you the truth.
It's not only the accusation of a crime that may have been committed that is the justification to then kill somebody, which it is not. It is the precursors of the adjutant up to that point of a specific law or maybe a crime being committed, such as that, like Donald Trump saying, "Oh well, Alex shouldn't have had a gun. If he didn't have a gun, it wouldn't have been that situation would be different." It's like, well, that's a Second Amendment right. So are you now saying that we shouldn't exercise that right because that's a problem? Or to say, well, he shouldn't have been there. If he wasn't there, that wouldn't have happened to him. Okay, so we shouldn't exercise our First Amendment rights to protest and our First Amendment right to assemble or to be present. So the precursor to all these things are, you're wrong because you were exercising a right. But then when that narrative runs into the wall of, well, that doesn't make sense, then it comes out with the, oh well, they didn't obey, or
Right.
she didn't immediately listen. Well, if I were in a vehicle and a masked agent came to me, calling me names, pulling at my door handle, spraying me with mace, I'd probably be pretty scared too. And even if what I was doing in that moment of driving away may have been evading, it does not deserve the death penalty. That's for sure.
Right. And as we see with Alex Preddy, they say, well, he kicked in a taillight 10 days ago. So, okay, so now we can execute you because you did something that wasn't nice, 6 months or a year or 10 years or whenever. God forbid you did something in your life that was imperfect. You can be executed, and no one has a right to say that that's wrong.
Can you imagine going to misdemeanor court and the judge saying, you had a misdemeanor class 1A for assault on an officer by kicking in a taillight, and you got arrested last week because you were being resistant. I hereby punish you to death. Could you imagine that? No.
No.
That's the ridiculous nature of it, is to where we cannot allow these militarized violent ICE agents to be the judge, jury, and executioner. Because as a law enforcement agent, when you are trusted with a badge and a gun, you are held to a higher standard than the average citizen, because you are given the authority by the state to kill if need be. And when you choose to make that decision to kill, you are carrying the weight of the judge, jury, and the executioner in that decision. And it better be clear, and it better be justified. And evading arrest or kicking in a taillight are not means to be put to death.
Jose?
No, I concur with everything being said, and you have to remember though that this is all being done in the context of the DHS and its creation. ICE was born in 2003 as a part of the Department of Homeland Security initiative. To so-called have a task force that specifically goes after illegal immigration. My argument is, well, don't we already have law enforcement? Why do we need an untrained police agency to go out and terrorize innocent people who haven't done anything wrong, on the basis that they might be, the worst kinds of criminals, the worst kinds of rapists or whatever? Why is it that we need to create a whole new law enforcement of untrained policemen who some of them go through 6 weeks of training? I was just listening to a program last night where you kind of understand how this is designed. These environments are designed to create this kind of level of tension because now the city governments are no longer providing law enforcement to work with ICE. And so the law enforcement, like police officers, are trained to handle what's called red tape issues, where you have people who are protesting, blocking roads and stuff, right? So if the local police had been cooperating with ICE, in Minneapolis or something, the ICE agent would have asked an officer to move Renee Good, instead of the ICE officer who's not trained to handle this stuff, and as a result, they just decided to shoot her and treat her like a terrorist as opposed to a human being. And that's also part because of the fact that the president has given them the power to do that by signing NSPM 7, National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, back in December. If you are anti-ICE, anti-capitalist, anti-fascist, which I think is about 90% of the audience, probably fits in one of those categories, who's watching this or in any of the podcasts that we've been doing lately, you are now considered a domestic terrorist. You are not just a counter-protester. You're not just a counter-an activist. You are considered a threat to national security, and you are impeding in their operations to terrorize people, so they're going to treat you like a threat. They're not going to treat you like an activist. They don't care about your First Amendment rights. There was a video that came out of Greg Bovino, talking about in Los Angeles, where he's like prepping his boys by saying, whose city is this? It's our city. We're going to do whatever we want. Forget Newsom, forget the mayor. We're going to do whatever we want. It's our city. Hoorah. He's over there. Yeah, go on.
Handing out chicken bones for people to put through their noses before they send them out on these deployments. It's just so barbaric. I want to slightly now turn this because I truly believe that people want to be good. And people want to be kind to other people. I don't think people wake up in the morning, maybe Bovino, but not many people or someone with the IDF wake up and say, oh, gee, I'm really, I'm feeling cannibalistic today. Who can I kill? Who am I going to eat? People don't wake up saying that. You have an impulse to aid your fellow man, but you're not allowed to because we have a culture that says if you believe in helping someone else, you are a chump. You're a liberal. They have to be punished. Don't you get it? But imagine if we had a culture, an economy with a mission. Imagine if we said, for example, we're just actually, the Artemis mission is sending 4 astronauts up to orbit the moon for the first time in over 50 years. And we said, we really want to build 20 science cities in the United States to prepare for the colonization of Mars. And we're going to need tens of thousands of new engineers. And, what color is your brain? I think it's the same color as everyone else's brain. And suddenly every person then becomes a potential talent. You don't know what child. Beethoven had a horrible upbringing, really a mess, backwards out of just, you would not have, he would have been in one of those computer programs of someone likely to be a criminal and euthanized by some of the AI programs they're doing now. So if you have a mission which needs the talent of your people, then suddenly you look at everyone differently, because instead of saying, what's the evil crime this animal is about to do, you say, what is the potential? What makes this guy tick? What is going to really turn this person on? Do they have a particular talent that we need at this moment? And I think we really have to get there. I think that's part of the leadership question of running for office, is to give people a completely different vision so that we can lift them out of the particular way that they're thinking in the moment.
Yeah, of course, I agree with you. I mean, that's part of our Space Civilian Construction Corps program, you know, because, and I mean, I would also be interested to ask Tony. I mean, Tony, if I hope you don't mind if I dialogue with you here a little bit, but you know, what are you going to say to a constituent who tells you, okay, so we abolish ICE, we abolish the surveillance state. Well, then what? Like, what then? Let's say you got your way. What are you prepared to do next?
Oh, well, in terms of DHS and well, first of all, I want to premise that by saying that not only do I think we should abolish ICE, I think we should abolish the Patriot Act and all of the associated departments and policies within it. So what are we going to do if we're not surveilling American citizens? Well, we're not going to surveil American citizens. The aspect of the immigration function, the Department of Immigration and Naturalization Services and the other agencies that were abolished when ICE was created in 2003. So here's the thing. This narrative of the quote unquote the illegal immigrant or the illegal alien in our country. Prior to 2003, we had about 8.5 illegal or undocumented or not fully documented or not in line with the process of naturalization in the country. And after 2003, it jumped to 12.5 and has been steadily increasing. Not because we've had hundreds and thousands or millions of more crossing the border illegally, but those that we had here that did cross the border illegally were then here illegally because the process then failed in naturalizing them because we no longer had the naturalization process, because instead of having naturalization services, we created an enforcement mechanism for counter-terror operations through ICE. So the system failed, not the people. And
yeah. No,
so,
I don't mean to cut you off. Let me posit something to you, and maybe you may want to consider adopting this as policy. But if you look at the entire United States, I mean, you've been to many corners of the United States at this point, right? You've seen the infrastructure fail everywhere. If you want to repair that, all of it, let's say within 5 years, I don't think you have the manpower or the resources to do it all internally right now. I think you would need a crash program of young people between the ages of 18 to 30 to work with the Army Corps of Engineers to train them to be engineers. And even then, I think if you took the majority of young people of that age who are American citizens, it still wouldn't be enough. I think you can open this up to people who are migrants, who want a path to citizenship and a path to a good life, where you can open it up for them to be a part of this crash program too. And you're going to tell them, you go on this program for 2 years, you work for the federal government for 2 years, you come out of it with a citizenship, you come out of it a citizen, and you will be responsible for building new cities and responsible for fixing all of the infrastructure in the country, modernizing it and bringing high-speed rail so that you could go from North Carolina to Washington, D.C. within 2 hours with high-speed rail, as opposed to driving, which I know is like 5 hours, or, you know, an expensive flight, because the high-speed rail would be cheaper. I mean, what do you think about that as a proposal?
yeah, I think that's excellent in terms of utilizing that human capital for citizenship. But also, if you were just to look at it and say, okay, magic wand right now, every immigrant in this country going through the process, boop, you're gone, you're out of here. Well, I hope the United States government is going to find a way to replace that $96.4 billion of tax revenue.
And labor, because it is, you know, I met with some people in the buildings trades upstate New York about 3 or 4 years ago. They told me they were having such a hard time finding people who would work. And then they also said that they're not qualified. As you both may know, there's an enormous problem in getting enough people to pass drug tests now in this country to do work that involves heavy equipment or any kind of skill that's dangerous. You don't want someone who's high operating a crane, hopefully. You know, so they said, look, and this was the union guys, they said, can't we just take all of these undocumented people and put them in an apprenticeship, make them, put them in the apprenticeship program and pay them the union wages and have them pay taxes, because then they won't be undercutting our labor, right? Because that's another way that they divide people, is they use illegal, undocumented people to undercut wages, because they know that they are desperate, or they're sending money back home where the cost of living may be much lower. The money goes farther. So they're not so concerned about getting the same wage. But the union guys said, look, we need skilled workers. We need people who want to work. And they should be paid the same as us. And that way they're not undercutting our wages or undercutting the union process. It just makes so much sense. And it's not as if we don't need it. I mean, I see, Tony, you're in a car going somewhere. I'm sure the roads are in fabulous shape, unless you're in some place unknown to the rest of the country.
Yeah, I mean, there's, to me, the anti-immigration policies that we've now seen under Stephen Miller, who is the architect of the U.S. immigration policy right now under the Trump administration, isn't about responsible immigration or responsible processes to immigration or responsible pathways to immigration. It's racism. That's what we're seeing. And we're seeing that on the streets of Minneapolis. Ohio is next. We see that they're staging and they're ready to go into Ohio, and then soon will be Atlanta and the southern suburbs of Georgia, where you have a lot of Democrats and Hispanic migrant workers. So it's coming.
Tony, let me propose something else to you too. Edgar Poe, who's a poet who lived in the Bronx in his last years of his life, came out of a military tradition of West Point. Now, I don't think he actually finished in West Point, but many of his, for example, his grandfather, right, David Poe, right, was one of the people who came out of this tradition, who also upheld the ideals of the American Revolution. They came out of a time where the military was seen to produce people who were city builders, right? You weren't just taught how to kill, you were taught surveying, you were taught basic engineering, infrastructure, and you also had to have a cultural and educational component to what you were doing. That was the military of back then, of real discipline and of upholding the real principles of the Constitution and of the Declaration of Independence. And I think the only semblance that we see of that today is the Army Corps of Engineers, because these guys are amazing. I'm sure you know better than I do how quickly they can build something up in just a matter of days, if not hours, in terms of infrastructure. And I'm saying we should bring that level of discipline, we should bring those ideals to the regular, everyday people through a program, a federally funded program, where that is the idea of what it means to serve your country. So it's no longer just some guy with a gun going to a foreign country and to impose democracy, but now it's, no, I'm bringing a hammer, I'm bringing nails, I'm bringing my mind, and I'm bringing my reason, and I'm bringing a cultural, optimistic outlook. That's my idea for a military, for a modern military outlook. And I think it's something you may want to consider adopting as well.
Well, that was always the construct of the United States military in the first place. The West Point was founded as an engineering school. That's a fact. Every cadet that graduates from West Point graduates with a bachelor's of science in engineering. It's an engineering school. It was designed that way on purpose. That is what Washington designed when he created the United States Military Academy at West Point. It was to be an engineering school, to teach engineering, to rebuild the country, to build this new land. And yeah, to your point, that is what Title 10 of the U.S. Code law that founds and funds the Army, is that it's always been intended to be that. The United States military was never intended to be this ultra hyper offensive killing machine equipped with every state-of-the-art weapon to dominate and kill people and invade countries. We've become that. That is not the intent of the United States military. And to your point, yes, I think in addition to having people work through the Corps of Engineers or through an American Corps of Engineer type program, not only does it give them a skill, but it gives them ownership and buy-in to the country they built. It's patriotism when you when you look at that, look what I had a part of. So I totally agree with that. But but to me, that's common. That's always been the premise of the United States military. That's why, like, the United States Military Academy was founded. It was founded as an engineering school.
Exactly. And Hamilton actually was involved in drafting the first curriculum for West Point. And if you look at it, you will realize that most people earning a doctorate in anything right now could not have even got through what was the standard at West Point. Well, I know Tony has to go soon, and I don't know about your situation, Jose, but maybe we should wrap up. But I would like to hear from both of you. I think we should all think through, what does it look like to get out of this? Tony, what do you think it's going to take? Do you see this changing? How do you think that's going to work?
I do see it changing, and I think that we're far from it having to be a violent or armed rebellion or revolution. We have so many tools in our freedoms, like voting. Get out and vote. Express your rights. Do not be afraid by the fascist state that if you go out to a protest that you're breaking the law. It's scary. It's scary knowing that if you speak out, you could be targeted or unfairly targeted. And that's what they want. And we cannot acquiesce to that. But I do know that the vast majority of Americans do not want where we are now or the path that we are on. But they need leaders to step up and say, hey, I'll take this on. Freedom is not a spectator sport. And more so than now than ever, we're seeing that it's going to take everybody to participate in it and to see the truth for what it is. If we think that in this current administration that our interests as a country are well taken care of in the hands of Donald Trump or Steve Miller or Pete Hegseth or Marco Rubio, I think so many Americans are waking up to the fact that is not the case. But then how do we change that? We offer alternatives. We offer solutions, and we give people hope and reason to want to go out and vote to bring those solutions and that change to America. Not just complain about a problem, but propose a solution.
I'm on that wavelength too, Tony. And I think that, maybe we can expand a little bit more on a crash program for young people, especially people who have either dropped out of high school or only have a high school degree or, college graduate or college dropout. Everybody deserves a second chance at life. And this crash program to get people to become engineers again, to get people to become basic surveyors, city builders, poets, everything it takes to build a good city and a good society and a good culture around it is what's needed right now. And I think if we carry that idea at the forefront, we will be pioneers for a future and an ideal that had already existed in the minds of the people that created this country 250 years ago. And that's what we need to return to, And just one more point, I'm a big believer that we need more people, not less. There's a quote from Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing, where Benedict says, the world must be peopled. And I genuinely believe that, we need to take in more people. That was the purpose of the Statue of Liberty and the Emma Lazarus poem on there. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses. This country is supposed to be for everyone. And we need to uphold those values. And we need to also stick to the ideals that everybody deserves a fair trial. Everybody, even the people committing the injustices, they have to be tried in court. They have to be tried by a judge. No one should be judge and executioner off the bat without a fair trial. So that's my conclusion for the night.
Thank you. I will just say that I share your optimism, your cautious optimism, because of course, these wars that we're about to embark in could really spin out of control in a very dangerous way. But I'm proud of the American people, because what people have done, what you see coming together in Minnesota, the resistance is not just so-called left or liberal. When you have the chief of police holding a press conference talking about the fact that his officers are being harassed by ICE agents because they happen to be non-Caucasian, and people saying it is not right for American citizens to have to run around carrying papers to prove that they're citizens. And what happened with the Second Amendment groups saying you cannot shoot someone just because he had a gun. There's an interesting coalescing, I think, of the American people. And therefore, I think our voices are very much needed, because this process needs leadership from above. It needs a program. It needs a direction. Jose, I think your work on the Civilian Construction Corps is really critical. And Tony, I'm so glad you've decided to jump into this ocean, and your attitude is right. I think people don't understand. For those of us who are refusing to ally with a party, who are refusing, I haven't even been offered, of course, AIPAC money or anything else. This is not for our personal well-being or safety or security. I know what it means for each one of us to step forward in this way. And it's a certain kind of risk that you do because you love the people, you love the nation, and most importantly, we love the children who have not even been born yet, but hopefully will be in several generations from now. And they're not going to know who we are. Probably, maybe somehow they will, but they may not. But it doesn't really matter, because the question is if mankind is able to advance. So I really appreciate what you're doing. And just, is there any last words you would like to say?
No,
Your
I'm yeah, go to aguilarforuscongress.com, and at the website you can find all the ways you can to volunteer, donate, support. And again, but if you can't donate, that's fine. If you can't give your time because you're not local, you can't vote in North Carolina because you don't live here, fine. The use of social media, fighting against the legacy algorithm, fighting back against the legacy news media, and putting it out there that third parties do have a voice, and that it's not a wasted vote. It's actually an enhancement, not a spoiler. Get the word out, educate, spread the word, use social media. We can all do that. Just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, because my platform, this is people powered, and this is us. This is we. This is not me. This is we. And I do feel that we can succeed.
Great. Well, you have my endorsement for your candidacy. And it's Aguilar number 4 or FOR?
FOR, so Aguilar for uscongress.com. So with the FOR spelled out. So Aguilar, FOR, uscongress.com.
Great. And Jose, votevega.nyc.
You got it.
Yes. And for me, it's SARE, SARE, for written out, FOR, president.com. So everyone should visit all of our websites, sign up, pass the links around, get the word out, work with us to break this, and go in the streets and talk to real people in person. There is no substitute for meeting your fellow citizens, your American citizens and your citizens of the world, face to face and talking to them. So I want to thank you both very much. And I suspect we will be meeting again. I hope we are.
Absolutely. Yes, we will. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. I'll take care.
Yeah, you too.